Hello, this is Tina McMechen, Acting Executive Director for the American Society for the Positive Care of Children. Our mission is to prevent child abuse through positive parenting, advocacy, and education. We're delighted to be joined today by Carol Hogue from Darkness to Light. Carol, why don't you take a few minutes and just introduce yourself and your organization?
Hi, Tina. Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here today. My name is Carol, and I am a quality assurance specialist at Darkness to Light. And you're wondering what that is. Well, let me tell you what Darkness to Light is, and then I'll tell you what quality assurance specialist is. Darkness to Light is a nonprofit that seeks to end child sexual abuse, and so our purposes are in alignment for sure. We believe very much in equipping adults to help them prevent, recognize, and react responsibly to child sexual abuse. We definitely believe that children need to be educated, but we also know that adults set policy, they enforce policy, they make the rules, they have the voice, and they have the power. And so we want adults to be empowered to do their job in protecting children. There's nothing worse than a child going to their trusted adult and telling them that something's happening to them, and then the adult doesn't know what to do with it. So it's a full circle of prevention. And that's what Darkness to Light is about. My position at Darkness to Light is quality assurance, and so I am deeply immersed in our programs, knowing what people are teaching. We have volunteer facilitators who go out and do our training, and so I want to make sure that we're providing our training with integrity, but also develop new products. And I have been affiliated with Darkness to Light for 10 or 11 years now. And so this is a long-term relationship that I have with the organization. And just to give parents a little bit of highlight as to how I came to be involved in this, I had a son who was sexually abused. And thank goodness when he was 9 years old, he told us that this was happening, and we were able to address it as a family. And so we were able to report it, get him help, go through a court process, and all those sorts of things. And so the things that I'm talking about today, I've lived. Now, I don't want you to have to do that, which is why I'm on my bandwagon today, sharing with you and kind of beating the drum very loudly so that we all are better equipped to help kids who come our way.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us, Carol. And it's wonderful that you were able to turn that experience into advocating for others and educating others. We really appreciate you being here with us today. The thing that we have been talking about in previous conversations is what I'd like to focus on during our time in the webinar, and that is the family code of conduct that you guys are developing. So can you tell us a little bit about that and how you guys came up with that idea, and just give us some general information about it?
The family code of conduct, when we do our training, we talk about organizational codes of conduct. But when you're in a group that is primarily parents, they need to know to ask about organizational codes of conduct, but each family has our own set of rules that we go by. And we don't often sit down and think those through ahead of time. They're maybe not intentional. We might take what we grew up with, or combine what we grew up with our partner's values and beliefs, and come up with a mishmash. And so what we've done is created a document that will allow parents to really think through very intentionally what their values are, what their beliefs are, and how that impacts the boundaries that they set for their children, and to really empower parents. You know, I may be like the mom that doesn't let their kids go to sleepovers, but to be okay in doing that, and to know that we as parents should support one another, because we don't all have the same values, and we aren't all going to parent the same way. But we certainly don't need to cast judgment on people who make decisions that are different than ours. And so having a guide to just sit down and go through and talk about those things so that you are making intentional decisions will better protect your child and make you a better parent. And then in the process, you will model for other parents as well.
You know, when I was previewing the guide, what I love about it is you have so many different categories of examples, you know, of things that we as parents or caregivers need to think through. And I'd love to walk through some of those one by one. And I want to start with one that really struck me, because it's something that I believe I'm actually guilty of having done. And I know that millions of people do this a day, and they have no idea that it could actually be hurtful. And so that is the idea that we need to be cautious about posting children's pictures on social media. And so, for example, my daughter went to a birthday party and she's there with her little friends and they're all just so adorable. And, I wanted to take a picture and post it on Facebook. And so, can you talk to me about, why that may not be a good idea and how that could actually be harmful for children in ways that we may not have thought of before?
For one thing, we don't know everything that's going on with every individual in every family. So a family may be in a custody dispute or battle, or they may have someone that they don't want, someone who is related to them or someone in the community. They may have a person that they really don't want to follow their child's activities on Facebook or social media. And so just being aware of the fact that just because we feel very comfortable about putting our children's pictures out, that doesn't mean that applies to everyone else, which is why organizations have release forms, and you can choose to have your child's picture shared with media, or you could choose to not have it shared. And so I don't think we always think about that as individual parents. We just want to post the kids and they're having a great time, and we're not even aware of any implications that it might have for another family who might be in a difficult situation.
Oh, yeah, that was really an eye-opening one for me. So I'm glad that you included it in the guide. What about play dates? That was another area that was mentioned. Talk to me about play dates, because that's something that, I have 3 kids. One of them's a 6-year-old, and we are constantly doing play dates. And so what advice do you have for parents about that?
Well, when you think about play dates, usually, number one, they could be in a public place. So you could go to a local restaurant and they have a playground and the kids can play and mom's get a little break or dad's get a little break. Or it could be a play date where you are in another person's home, or your child is invited into another person's home. So who are the people who are in the home? How well do you know this family? How well do the children know one another? Have they played together before? Do they get along? How do they tend to handle conflicts? Does this parenting style reflect yours in some ways? The other things we need to think about are who's in the house. So you're sending them to play with a friend, but there might be an older teenager in the house with one of their friends. And our statistics tell us that 40% of abuse on children is an older child on a younger or less powerful child. And so just being aware of who's in the house, what's going on, all those sorts of things are important. And it's good just to have those conversations up front so there are no misunderstandings. And so that you're able to communicate to the parent in a proactive way that you are concerned and that you have certain expectations and that you would extend that same courtesy to their child when their child comes to your home.
So you're saying that let's say that my child's going to someone else's home, and for whatever reason, I'm not going to hang around. It's like a drop-off play date. That it's okay for me to say, okay, so who all's going to be there? Do you think that, is that the best way to approach it, just with direct questions to the other parent?
Well, I'm a pretty direct person, so that would be what I would do. That might not be what you would feel comfortable with doing. And so all of these ideas and things that we're putting out here, you have to kind of take that and frame it to who you are and who your family is. But I would just ask, who's going to be around? Mm-hmm. And if you've taken Stewards of Children training, you could say, I took Stewards of Children training and I've learned that I need to ask certain questions before my children play with other kids. And that way it's taking it off of you and it's putting it on, I'm being responsible for my children. And I'm not making an accusation. I'm just wanting to know who's going to be in the house. Because it could be that there's an uncle who's on the child offender list, the sexual offender list. You don't know, and you would think that you would hope and think that that person would not have that individual around while other children are around, but you don't know. I think that you don't know that, and the things that we don't know sometimes harm us, and the things that we assume harm us. And so, just asking in a very direct way, I know it may come across that I'm kind of picky here, but who all is going to be at the house? Who will be in and out? It just helps me to know. It just gives me more information and more comfort about the kids playing together. And I'll share the same information with you.
Well, and that's the thing is maybe if we, as the informed parents, sort of model that behavior, it'll just become natural over time for others also. So
yes.
That's great. And, you know, the other thing that I saw on in your booklet was the concept of asking about internet access, which I wouldn't have thought of. I mean, my 6-year-old is on the internet a lot here at our house, but, you know, we kind of have things more locked down, and I had never thought about asking, well, how do you guys handle that at your house? So do you want to speak to that for a minute and give us some tips on making sure that whether they're at your own house or someone else's, that they're safe on the internet?
Right. And so the internet, we teach people to avoid one-on-one adult-child situations. And whether or not it's a face-to-face encounter or an encounter on the internet is still a one-on-one, unsupervised situation for the most part. And so if they're going to be on the internet, I would ask, where is the computer located? Do they have handheld devices? What sort of access do they have to that? Because children are younger and younger as they are getting handheld devices. And so when they have that computer in their pocket, they have access to anything and everything. And so it's just the same as, what are your rules around, you don't cross the street by yourself. Well, we're not going to do the internet unsupervised. We're not going to get involved in that. I have a good friend, Joe Laramie, who has done a lot of information and talks on internet safety. And one of the things he talks about is that you teach your child to drive, and you go through lessons, and you let them know what they're supposed to do, what they're not supposed to do, how fast they can go, how long they can be gone, how many of their peers they can have in the car. And yet we hand them a cell phone that has internet access, and we don't go through any of those procedures with that. Why would you not apply the same process to a handheld device or the internet that you would to handing a 16-year-old a set of car keys?
Mm-hmm. That is really rational advice that I'd never thought of that way. So I'm really glad you brought that up. Going back to sort of the concept of just being in the house. So we talked about play dates, but often a natural extension of a play date is, the child ends up sleeping over. So what are your top tips for protecting our children during sleepovers?
Well, number one, you have to decide as a family if that's something you're comfortable with, right? So you may just decide that's totally off, we're not doing that. You need to know the maturity of your child. Once again, the relationship they have with the person that they're going to be spending the night with, who's going to be in the house. I would always, if they're going to spend the night, I would not leave it to that parent, either let them skip a bath that night or give them a bath before they go. And that way they take care of all of their personal stuff, and you don't have to worry about them being in an isolated or a situation where they might be uncomfortable. And those kinds of things, but also you don't, and this goes for play dates as well. You don't ever want to have the doors closed. You always want the doors to be open so that someone can walk in or someone can observe. You want them to all sleep in the same room. Don't have one child who's isolated away from the other children, because that puts them at risk for harm. And then the other thing would be not sharing sleeping bags, and just really generally talking through with the child, especially if it's one of the first or second times they've gone on a sleepover. These are some things you can expect, and this is what it's like to sleep over. And so other families may have different rules or do things differently, but it should be pretty much in line with what we're teaching you to do as well. And then checking in. You could check in by FaceTime and just kind of visually see how your child's doing, or give them a call, or even stop by. And if you have a child who's not ready for a sleepover, because this is a lot of pressure for families, for parents, and for children, ask the parent, what's a good break time? I know most of the kids will be sleeping over. Susie's not going to be sleeping over. What's a good break in the activity for me to come and pick her up so that's not super awkward? Like, are they going to the movies and pizza in the movies, and then they're going to come home and do X, then pick her up at the movie theater, or him. And so just finding those good break times where you can get them and they feel like they've been a part of the group, but they're not totally excluded.
Someone in my family did something kind of like that. They had a pseudo sleep. That's my name for it, a pseudo sleepover. Where it was all these little girls, and they wore their pajamas and watched movies and drank hot chocolate, but then everybody went home at 10 o'clock. So the whole party was because it was like they were
That's
going to
perfect.
go anyway. So I thought that was, I mean, they're younger, and I thought that was kind of a cool
Right,
way to handle it.
right.
So,
I think that's great. So creativity comes into play as well. That's
yeah.
very creative.
Yeah. What about what tips do you have like for sleepovers if you're dealing with siblings of opposite gender? Like for example, at our house, if my son and daughter have bedrooms upstairs, so if one of them has someone spend the night, then the other one has to like come downstairs and sleep. So have you seen anything like that? Like if there's mixed genders among the siblings, any tips for that type of situation?
I think that's a great idea, and I think also just to let the older children know that this is the younger child's time with their friends, and so I want you to really just kind of lay back and chill and not get in their way, so that you're kind of limiting their time together, so that they're two separate. There's the older kids' activities and the younger kids' activities. But I think just being aware of sleeping arrangements and being aware of that is important. And when we're aware of it, we can come up with some pretty creative solutions.
Well, now for like the holy grail of questions, I think for parents, because I can't think of a parent that I've ever met that didn't use a babysitter at least once. I'm sure they're out there, but most parents at some
Right.
have to hire someone to come and help watch their child at some point or another. So talk to us about selecting babysitters and what tips do you have, because for a lot of families that's a really important thing.
It's very important because many families are not always close to their families, for their families to pitch in and do things with their children and help kind of cover that babysitting area. And so when you have to depend on someone outside the family, I mean, you should be just as cautious with someone inside the family. Let me say that first. But outside the family, I would get some references. I would do an interview. American Red Cross, if you're using teenagers, American Red Cross has the babysitter course. Shouts out to American Red Cross. Darkness to Light has Stewards of Children training, which you can ask your babysitter to take. But you can also go through an agency that does a lot of those screenings for you already. So those are a couple of options. But the other thing that I would do would be to let them know, pop in, interrupt the babysitting time. And so maybe you're going to dinner and a movie, and you, before you go to the movie, you pop in to make sure everything's okay. If everything's not okay, then you can stay there, so that they know that no matter what you say, that time could change up. It's just making it's holding people accountable. I never know when this mom might show up, so I need to make sure that I'm doing everything that I need to do all the time with the children. Letting them know they can't have a guest over when they're babysitting. It's that the babysitting is their job. Another idea that I heard that I thought was really good, and I can't really take any credit for this, is to have all the children go to bed at the same time, because you're wanting to isolate one-on-ones. And so if they're younger children, when the younger children go to bed, then the older children can go into their bedroom, they get ready for bed and dressed and everything, and they can stay up and they can do some sort of approved activity. It could be reading or watching a movie, or it could be working on a project for school or whatever it is, but there's no one-on-one time. You either have all the children and the babysitter together all the time, or they're separate. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's a really good tip that I picked up somewhere along the way. And I had not ever thought of that. I mean, in some ways it feels a little bit like punishment to the older kids, but if that's your routine and that's what you do all the time, they don't know anything any different. And you don't have to tell them the reason for doing that. You just let them know that these are the rules when the babysitter's here. So this is our family code of conduct. These are our rules. The other thing that you might want to do too is just to, as you're transporting the babysitter back home, if they don't provide their own transportation, is just to be aware of their comfort level. Would you prefer a male to take you home or a female to drive you home? And so you want to make sure that they feel comfortable as well, because these teenagers are still just teenagers, and you don't want to put them in a difficult situation either. So you just have to, and I know some people are saying, well, after hearing all this, I'll probably never have a babysitter. It's okay to have a babysitter. Just think of all the contingencies and all the boundaries that you want to put into place so that the sitter has a good experience and your kids have a good experience and you get a break.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's the point I think of this webinar, is to bring up things that maybe parents hadn't thought of before. So I'm glad that you mentioned that about who's going to drive the sitter home. I think that's a perfectly valid thing to think through. So thanks for mentioning that.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
The next scenario, which my big kids have done, but not my little one, my 6-year-old, is sleepaway camp. So
Okay.
you go and you drop them off in the woods or wherever they are for a week, and you hope for the best. So give us some tips for making sure that they are safe at sleepaway camp.
So we're talking right now about family code of conduct, but one of your rules that you should have is that you know about any organization that provides services to your child, whether it's sleepaway or music lessons or anything like that, that you know what their policies are around child protective behaviors, and that you know what their reporting policy is, and that you have a very clear understanding of that. And if they don't have that policy, then you don't need to have your child participate in that organization. There are other organizations who are providing policies, and they're upfront and clear about those, and those are the places that you want to support and to have encourage and provide enrichment for your children. So I would ask questions like, in the cabins, are the kids ever left in the cabins by themselves, or they have to go in groups of 4, or is there a counselor, and there's maybe a counselor in training, so there are 2 adults that are there, and 2 adults are important, not just for protection from child sexual abuse, but also if there's a medical emergency. Because if you have a medical emergency, you need someone who needs to take care of the child who's having the emergency, but you have all these other children that you're responsible for as well. What is the shower policy? You know, who showers when? Do the counselors shower at the same time? Kids shouldn't be. What is policy for the nurse's station? And if you need to go to the nurse's office or the nursing area because you need some ice on a bruise or something, who will be in there? How many people will be in there? Where is the clinic located? Is it located front and center when you go into the administration building or wherever? Or is it tucked back in a corner? You want it to be in a place where kids can be observed and where the actions can be interrupted. And so those are just good safety questions to ask. Yeah, but knowing what those policies are is very, very important. And some parents are intimidated and afraid to ask that question, but there's nothing wrong with doing that because, you know, our children are the most precious thing that we have. And there's something that we've invested a lot of time into and a lot of love into, and before it's all over with, believe me, a lot of money. And so we just want to make sure that the people that are spending time with our children are giving them the very best and are putting them in the places where they will be able to succeed and not something that will harm them.
Absolutely. And, you know, that's a great segue into my next question, which is, how do you think that all of this ties in with our mission, which is related to positive parenting or the positive care of children? So I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you could just talk about, you know, what positive parenting means to you and how that ties in with the mission of Darkness to Light, that'd be really helpful.
I think we're all after the same thing. We want children to be happy and healthy, and we want children to be children. We don't want them to have to deal with adult kinds of experiences. But we also, our goal at Darkness to Light, even though child sexual abuse is a tough topic to talk about, anyone who takes Stewards of Children training will walk away feeling empowered, knowing that they can do more and knowing that they can protect their children. And they can start doing that the minute they walk out the door or the minute they stop the training. I mean, from then on, you go from having glasses like this to having big clown glasses where you have a totally different lens. And so I think anything that we can do, no matter what organization it comes from, to equip parents to be empowered to provide their children the very best is a good thing. It's a good thing. And so I think what we do and what you do are super important. And as I said, we're all working toward making sure that our kids are healthy and whole and happy, and they get to be kids for as long as they can be kids.
Absolutely. Well, the last thing that I'll ask you is, we have tossed around a lot of information here, and if you had to distill this down to one piece of advice, if I said to you, Carol, you get 20 seconds and you can only give one piece of advice to our constituents, what would that one thing be?
To equip yourself with as much knowledge as you can to make good decisions on behalf of your children. And that incorporates doing a lot of different kinds of things, but to be open and to be teachable and to be willing to think about things in a different way, and to do that so that your children are protected and they know that you love them and they know that you're behind them no matter what, because that helps build resilience in them. And so when those hard things do come along, then they know that their mom or their dad, their caregiver, has their back, that they're going to support them and they're going to be there and available for them, and they can count on their parents.
I love that.
That was probably more than one thing, but anyway.
Well, I think it all boils down to let them know you love them and you're on their team.
Absolutely.
So, I love it. Well, the last thing that I want to mention for anyone watching this webinar, and Carol, maybe you can give some more details on this, is you guys had generously offered for anyone who participated in the webinar, they could have access to your online training, talking with children about safety from sexual abuse at no charge. So could you tell the folks who are here with us how you'd like them to contact you to get access to that?
Absolutely. What you would do is just go into our website, d2l.org, the letter D, the number 2, the letter L.org, and look for trainings. And this is one of our additional modules, and you would use the code CARE, C-A-R-E, to access that. And so now I've just given that away to a whole bunch of people, I think. I hope. It's a 30-minute video. It's wonderful. It gives you practical information and really kind of adds to what we've talked about today. And I think will be a real encouragement to you. And so I do hope that you will go and seek that out. And while you're on the website, also look at all of the information and the resources that we have available to you, and let us know if you want to do a training in your area.
Yeah, and I was going to ask, this is your chance to pitch D2L. So you guys do trainings, right? For I guess, schools, churches,
anybody, anywhere. Absolutely. And so our goal is to train all adults. We have a very ambitious goal of training 4 million people by 2020. And we're at about 1.8 million right now. So we have a lot of trainings that we need to get done, that we want to get done. It's not that we need to get done, that we want to get done, because we know that when we all have people who have all gone through the same training and all had conversations in community, you can take it online or in person, but in person, you get to talk with people who are in the same organization, and then you're all hearing the same thing. And so you can go, oh, well, that person from Darkness to Light said this. We need to do this. And so it just kind of gives everybody the same guideline to follow. And it's also a guided conversation through a really tough topic. And so we really like to be able to do the training in person, but if we can't, we can also do that online, and that's d2l.org again. But if you're out there and you want to do something in your community, I know you're in Arkansas, and so we just did 3 workshops in the state of Arkansas. But there are other states where we have representatives in every state. May not have anybody particularly in your community, but we'll do everything that we can to make sure that you get the training that you need. Well,
that's just fantastic. And you guys have been a wonderful partner organization for the American SPCC. And it has been an honor and a delight to talk with you today. And maybe the information that you shared will save a life. I sure hope so. And
at least one.
If it just saves one, it was worth it,
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Thanks again, Carol. And y'all make sure you check out Darkness to Light's website. And we'll get this, for those of you here live with us, we'll get this posted on the American SPCC YouTube channel as soon as possible. Feel free to share this video with everybody you know.
Share.
Yep. Thanks again, Carol.
Thank
Hope you have a wonderful day.
You too. Bye-bye.